Sutton United Talk Time on podcast. It's the Sutton Podcast.
And there it is! Sutton United of the GM Vauxhall Conference have put out First Division Coventry City, winners of the FA Cup themselves less than 2 years ago. And what a moment to enjoy for the fans of this Surrey side. They've had their moments before, but never one like this.
But the whistle goes down. Delight for Sutton United. Sutton United from the National League are through to the last 16 of the FA Cup. No longer English football's perennial non-league club. A 123-year crescendo reaches a new peak for Sutton United, who are promoted to the Football League for the first time.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Sutton United Talk Time on podcast. It's I'm sticking with this name, the Sunday service. Joining me today is Andy Kay, who's been on before, but I'm going to ask some of the same questions because it was one of the ones where the recording was left a bit to be desired. So hi Andy, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. As I said to Andy beforehand, I haven't quite worked out how to get the sound clips on here, so you are going to be spared from the "Who are you" chant. But give us a little bit about your Sutton history. It definitely didn't come through properly last time. I know you've been supporting for a year or two.
Yeah, just a couple of years. It's good to see you're not eating crisps this time, unlike last time. Well, that's what it sounded like.
Oh, man.
Yeah, okay. My Sutton United history. That's my first game in September 1987. It was a GM Vauxhall Conference home match versus Boston United. We lost 2-1, I believe. I think it was on the 5th or the 12th of September. I think that was also the day that Vernon Pratt made his debut for Sutton. For those of you who remember the commentary side, he was on number 5 that day. And been supporting ever since. I was massively fanatical for the first few years. Then life got in the way. So it was more of a case of dipping in for quite a bit of the 90s to the early 2000s, and then about 2003, 2004, I threw my lot in again, and now I'm a home and away traveller. I think I've missed 2 games this season, which I know isn't as good as some other supporters, but it will just certainly do me.
It's better than some as well.
So I've been fortunate enough to witness all of those moments in person that were in your intro, but I've also witnessed the 3 relegations that Sutton United have suffered in their history. So it's been a mixed bag.
Well, yeah, mixed, but mostly up in the last years. You're about a year, 18 months ahead of me with when you started, but very similar to what you're saying is came along sort of high school. I chose a Sutton for various reasons, but unlike you, my first ones were winning matches, so that's what made me come back, to be honest, bit of a glory hunter. And yeah, same as life with the Saturday jobs and everything getting in the way, and then getting out of retail and being like suddenly like, oh, hang on a minute, we've got Saturdays again. Woohoo! Yeah. And it sort of coincided with just a little bit before DOS, but mostly with the DOS era and beyond, which obviously helps you when you're coming along every week.
Well, yeah.
One other question I asked Andrew, and I think it's quite good, and I've got a theory on what the answers are going to be for most people, but just to find a little bit more about you, excluding all the current bunch, who would be your top or your favourite Sutton player? No particular reason. It doesn't have to be any reason at all. Just
I think even if you included all the current Sutton bunch, I would still have a favourite player, and it would be Paul McKinnon. It's an obvious answer. Paul McKinnon. If for those Sutton supporters that didn't see Paul McKinnon in his prime, you missed an absolute gem. The guy, I've never seen a goal scorer of his ability. He was a complete natural. He'd score anyway, headers, volleys, punted in shots, anything you like. It's just, the guy's record speaks for himself, but actually watching him play was just fantastic. And I would say probably, even though I had that losing start, he's probably the main reason why I stuck with Sutton. Because he was just an absolute legend, and I got a chance to meet him about 10 years ago, and I was completely starstruck. I'm like, "Hello, Paul. Yeah, you're great. I'm your number 1 fan." But yeah, that's the answer.
Well, you either heard last week and you're on a wind up, or you didn't hear last week. But my favourite was Lenny, and it was because I always felt a little bit sorry for him, because at the start of the season he was like the main man. Everyone loved Lenny, everyone loved him, and then Paul came back from Sweden. And everyone was like, "No, we love him. We love him." And I was like, "Excuse me, how dare you?" I always had this little just umbrage against him for some bizarre reason. As an adult looking back, I realised that's a bit stupid, but at the time I was like, "No, I'm not having this." But yeah, no, I'm thinking when I ask these questions, a lot of people's answers are going to be very, very similar of players that when they first started. But very quickly, because I have another guest on in just a mo. We want to quickly talk about Bristol Rovers match, and you were there. How was it? How was the overall thing?
From my perspective, really disappointing. Bristol Rovers were one of the poorest sides I've seen all season. They really had nothing about them. They were really poor up front. They couldn't really hold the ball very well. They were overly physical, and certainly physical in a way that doesn't really prescribe to the letter of the law. But I think the more disappointing thing is that you can only play a team that's in front of you, and whatever that team throws at you, you have to try and do what you can to kind of match them and beat them. And I think we just had a really bad day in the office. There was a lot of players, I think, yesterday who really had off days. I think, again, off the top of my head, I can think of 2 or 3 players that I thought, conducted themselves well, but I think overall we were really off the mark. Saying that, although that sounds like a criticism, it's completely understandable with the injuries we've got, with the run of games that we've had, and we are going to continue to have for the next week or so. The players are knackered. These are League Two players. These are not £100,000 a week Premier League players at all. If our players could perform consistently week in, week out, they probably wouldn't be playing at this level. Yeah. So I don't want to be harsh. And again, it's not exactly an embarrassment going out 2-1 to a side in the same division as us away from home. It's always kind of balancing up. It just felt a little bit disappointing. Watching Matt's interview from last night, you could almost tell that he was disappointed in a similar sort of way. It's kind of like he seemed really down and deflated and kind of like huffing and sighing a little bit. And you could just see that I think he felt probably we let ourselves down rather than we were beaten necessarily by a better team.
Yeah, I think that's sort of overriding from what I'm picking up everywhere is people just like, oh, we could have, and that's the disappointment. It's not like where we lost to Leyton Orient. It was like we just got battered 4-1, but it's like, oh, you know what? If we played that game again, we'd probably get battered just as much. So it's one of those horrible things. I mean, I was listening on iFollow, and I have to say, I think it was Ahmed and Cameron. They were quite scathing of the ref. Inconsistencies they were calling it, being quite polite, but they were saying just before the penalty was given, there was one on Donovan that they were like, how was that not given? And that one was. It was just all a bit odd. But we're out. We get to concentrate on the Pizza Cup. Yay! We got Colchester in that at home, so that'll be one I'm going to. So yeah,
it's funny that we're playing Colchester in consecutive weeks and consecutive years.
Yeah,
which is a bit strange.
But yeah, you know what? It's one of those you'd say winnable matches. But yeah, Bristol Rovers they're a big club. Of obviously building up to it and trying to steal things from other people's podcasts. I was listening to a couple of their podcasts, and they have huge crowds, and they're definitely a League One / Championship club rather than League Two. They're just going for a dip at the moment. So
I don't know whether this is the FA Cup or not, but the Bristol Rovers crowd yesterday were the loudest crowd I've heard all season.
Yeah,
they were really. They were completely in unison as well. It was they've got a really good strong following, but of course we've got to play them on Boxing Day. And actually, if we turn up and play all right, from the evidence I saw yesterday, I don't think we're going to have too much of a problem. I don't think it's going to be the same.
Yeah, I definitely don't think the result will be the same. I think you'll have a few players coming back a bit stronger. Could Louis have done with a rest? Maybe. I'm not saying he was rushed back, but if it was a league game, maybe you could have thought, you know what, we'll give him one more week just to get over it. But anyway, maybe them being used, and we need a singing section like Bromley. Okay, we'll skip that.
Yeah.
The other thing I was just going to ask you to do to finish that one off is you said there was only sort of 2 or 3 players you can think of that played as expected, but I'm going to be asking you for your player of the day, your pod. Sutton podcast pod. It's going to stick. I don't care. It's going to stick.
It's basically going to be the player that you could pick pretty much in every single game as player of the day. And the one player that I am worried about going in the January transfer window, and that's Ben Goodliffe.
Okay.
Ben Goodliffe has been Mr. Consistency all year. He is an absolutely fantastic centre back. If we lose Ben, I think we've got a big problem. But he was holding it all together, as he so often does.
Yeah, I think one of those games earlier in the season, I put a tweet to him during the match. He was like thing from Lord of the Rings, "Thou shalt not pass." It was just like literally, just no one's getting past me today. Yeah, he's been brilliant. In fairness, obviously I wasn't there yesterday to see it, but for the whole season, you every single one of them is playing above themselves. I don't think there's any one of those players you can say you're not really trying. I think they're all playing at 100% of what we could expect from them, which is brilliant. And hopefully it will continue on Tuesday, which is a brilliant segue. So saying hello and introducing my next guest, who is from the 1912 Exiles. Just giving you an extra 100 years. Hello, Ed. How are you?
Flawless. That was absolutely flawless, Mike. Well done. Diolch am invitation. Thanks very much for inviting us on. Good afternoon. Happy to look ahead to Tuesday night. I think it's fair to say Newport fans are quite excited about this one. Firstly, because we've not played Sutton for a good long time, but we have just had the benefit of 10 days without a game because we allowed ourselves to get knocked out of the FA Cup early so that we can focus on the league. So this has been the first real chance that our new coach has had to work with the players and have that little bit of breathing space. So I think there's quite a lot of expectation at our end of the M4, and I think we're rather hoping that this will be where the season starts in earnest for us. We've started reasonably well and results have been good. We scored a lot more goals than we have in previous seasons, but I think there is that feeling in the camp that this could be the moment when the rocket boosters go on and we really start to make some progress up the table. And you may be the unlucky victims of that, but what's the expression about great plans and all the rest of it? So who knows what might happen.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was listening to a couple of your podcasts that steal ideas and become far more smooth and professional, like you've just seen. But your new manager, there's an odd one because he's got a lot of links with your club, but it was again like our guy Matt, untried at management.
Yeah, I mean, in a weird way, although he's not been in the managerial hot seat, he actually comes, I think, with an awful lot more experience in general terms, probably than Mike Flynn had when he took over, our previous manager. I mean, the thing with James Rowberry is he'd been the first team coach up the road at Cardiff City, who are, there's a rivalry there, but it's very much a one-way rivalry. So he'd been a coach at Cardiff City. Prior to that, he had not just been with the FAW, the Football Association Wales, but he'd been there. Really their kind of star in the making. He's the youngest ever manager in Wales to get all of his badges, and he'd been working with the national setup and within the FAW. He had done some coaching previously at Newport. So as a coach, he comes extremely well prepared and extremely well recommended, and is seen as being a very bright young thing. He also, grew up in Newport. He was a ball boy for Newport in the days when we were playing in exile over the border in Gloucester. So, his local credentials are impeccable, even just as much, if not more so, than Mike Flynn, who, was another Newport born and raised lad. So it feels as though we've been very lucky recently with having managers who understand the unique history of Newport as a club, who've, were a league club, then went bust, and then kind of rose back up through the leagues, and playing in exile and all the rest of it. So James Rowberry is someone who I think we've got very high expectations of. The early signs have been really positive. It's been kind of evolution rather than revolution. He's come in, stuck with more or less the same system, but the tweaks he's made have been noticeable. So we've been playing, this sort of 5-3-2 system with wing backs. Mike Flynn very much liked a hard man midfield general type who would, smash into the opposition players early on, let them know they're in for a game, all of that stuff. James Rowberry plays with a much more high tempo midfield. They're not the biggest lads, but they chivvy and chase and force opposition players into making mistakes. And then we counter and we hit teams very hard on the break. So we're quite easy on the eye, which has not always been the case in recent years. If you ask any other side who's been around Division 4 for a while, that that a lot of teams still have this idea that Newport are quite an agricultural sort of team, but actually they're increasingly now playing some quite nice football.
Lovely. Well, you're coming across us with a bunch of injuries, and we're not playing at all as we would hope. Wouldn't you agree, Andy?
Yeah, it's been slightly, feels like a bit of a deflating balloon over the last few weeks. I mean, when we went up to Tranmere and won 1-0 there, I don't think that scoreline reflected how well we played. We were really on our game. We just took it to Tranmere. Tranmere didn't have an answer, and that was probably one of the best games of the season. Then we've kind of impressed and not impressed at the same time. And we've spoken about that in Orient, which has always been, we kind of brush over that one. But then there was the 2-0 at home to Mansfield, where actually we were just efficient without being spectacular. It was a good performance, but it just didn't look like it. And then we had the awful game against Stevenage in the Pizza Cup. Which
but they don't count. Though.
No, they don't count.
We won a penalty shootout. I'm counting now.
3 penalties on the bounce save.
Yes.
See, though, it seems to me that what generally happens with the sides who come up from the conference is because that is such a hard league to get out of, and to win promotion, you have to be consistently good and have a real kind of winning mentality amongst your players, that teams come up, and then that winning mentality kind of gets them through for the first, 3, 4, 5 months. And they more often than not will finish kind of mid-table in that first season, or even top half of the table. But the fuel starts to run out in the tank kind of Christmas-ish, because it's a lot more games. You've got all of the extra kind of cup competitions, and it's physically so demanding. But and my perception of Sutton on the bits that I've seen and the bits that I've heard is that that's exactly what's happened to you. You've come up, played really well. You're higher than us in the table at the moment. But yeah, it does. You do start to get to realise this time, what a slog 4th division football is, and that there are some teams who are very tiring to play, including Newport, I think, and it does start to gradually grind down your squad a little bit as time goes on.
I think that's a very interesting point. I think it is, again, it goes with entertainment value versus results, and I think actually, we've probably been slightly less entertained than we could have been, but as we showed against Mansfield, we can still get those results. Same with Barrow. It wasn't a spectacular game at all, 1-1-0. And I think that's the kind of difference between the kind of success and a failure in a season. Because I think you're absolutely right. It will grind clubs down, particularly ones that are non-league, particularly ones who have come into this completely new after 123 years or however long it is. But it's more of a case of just making sure that those defeats end up being draws, and those draws end up being wins in any way they can be. So again, we're going to be playing you at the end of a very, very tough schedule. You guys, and then Bradford on Saturday. But I think the mentality within the players is pretty strong. It's one thing I've noticed about our manager in particular is that he doesn't really try and build a team around one player. He's very much a kind of every cog is important. And we don't really have a star player as such. People have their favourites, of course, but there isn't like almost a standout player, with maybe the exception of Ben Goodliff, as I mentioned earlier. But the team isn't built around him. The team is built as a team. So it's that kind of that mentality. And the thing is, when we've had players that would have been normally starting 11 players and they've got injured and somebody else has come in, invariably they've done either an identical job or in some cases a better job than the player than they replaced. So it's going to be interesting to see how it goes. I mean, obviously coming to a place like Rodney Parade on Tuesday, if we come away with a point, we'll be happy. But I certainly don't think we are going to be going there to get a point, if you see what I mean. A lot of clubs will come, particularly on a cold midweek in December, and just like, oh, actually, let's park the bus, guys. Let's come away with a draw. Don't think we're going to do that. It might work. It might blow up in our faces, but we'll see on Tuesday.
Just one little thing I want to just mention. Did you say 4th Division football?
Yeah, sorry, I'm still very old-fashioned. Yeah.
I was like, hang on a minute, how old are you? I barely remember. Other things I was listening and reading, your club very much, and Sutton, there's a lot of things that we're doing very, very similar. And I've heard you guys referring to a lot about the community club.
Yeah.
And you do a lot in the community. We kind of, I don't know how much you know about us going up, but that was one of the biggest concerns for us when we got promoted. Obviously the pitch, and everyone was like, you just want the pitch because it's a magic pitch and you win all your games on it, which, by the way, we've had more injuries since we've had the grass pitch than the entire time we had on the 3G. I'd just like to mention that. But our biggest concern when we come up was, actually, no, we've got a whole bunch of other teams. We've got ladies teams, the disability teams, all these kids playing on that pitch. So how do you guys fit it all in? Is it...
Yeah, I mean, well, we're tenants to the rugby club, so the Newport Gwent Dragons are the kind of main tenant at Rodney Parade, and then we sort of play around them. And actually, in fairness, for the first few years that was really hard, and especially this time of year, we'd be playing on what was like a ploughed field for December, January, February, and in fact, last season we had to play a few games up the road at Cardiff City because the pitch was unplayable at Rodney Parade. They spent a lot of money over the summer sorting it out, and so it can now withstand a rugby team and a football team on it. But because it's not our pitch, we don't get to do the sorts of things that Sutton were doing. And, I mean, we've got teams like Merthyr up the road from us who, they've got a plastic pitch and that is being used every single day, all the time, by all the community stuff. The community stuff that Newport County do that we're massively proud of as fans and as a podcast, is less about getting teams on to the club, but more the club going out and looking to see how we can support the local communities. Obviously, particularly as a fan-owned club, those links are massively important, particularly as a club that had to spend 10 years plus playing outside of Newport. The fact that we are now, the club is back in the city, and we can remake those links and have to remake those links because there's like an entire generation of kids who grew up without a team to watch in their city. It's really important. So we did a podcast last week talking to some of the people who are involved with our We Wear the Same Shirt campaign, which is there to support members of the community who might have mental health issues, who can get together for an hour a week and kick a ball around, have a coaching session, play a game of football. Because we said this in the pod, it doesn't matter whether you're watching football, playing football, coaching football. For that time that the game is going on, you're not thinking about work, you're not thinking about relationships, you're not thinking about anything else. So that's really good. I saw something up today that the club is raising lots of money to help the local food bank in the run up to Christmas, and like that's all really important. You can obviously it'd be even better if the government was feeding hungry people, but in the absence of that, is the fact that the club is working really hard on that is fantastic. And there's all the other stuff that goes on. But like as a community-run club, a fan-owned club and a community-led club it's so important to us. And anything we can do as a podcast to like try and showcase that is great. Yeah, it's really exciting for us.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have an awful lot of that at the moment. I'm very, very forgiving of our guys because literally since we got this promotion, it has been non-stop trying to get every single little detail sorted out. I'm sure they're the exact kind of things that we're going to be involved in, especially when, well, a lot of our supporters are very, very conscious of these things as well, aren't they, Andy?
Oh, yeah.
But yes, so we're looking forward to Tuesday. You're going, aren't you, Andy? Obviously,
I am, and
You are?
I was just thinking back to the previous times I've seen Newport. In my second season, I think we in that horrible season for Newport fans where they didn't complete the year, and Newport came to Sutton and drew 1-1. I think on a cold November night, which obviously has been expunged from history. But I went to the Spitty back in 2004, 2005. In that time, obviously have good memories of Spitty the dog, the mascot.
He's still going strong.
Excellent. And I just remember Newport fans, because you always kind of make a judgment, particularly at that level, when fans could mingle, there was no segregation. And I always remembered Newport fans being some of the nicest we'd met in that division. And we had, we always got really, really well with them, had a lovely chat with them. They were really, really nice people. And I remember there was one time we played Newport, friendliest bunch we could ever meet at that league. And I think the following week they were playing away to Lewis. And it kicked off between Lewis and Newport fans. And I just remember sitting there saying, how could it kick off? Newport fans are lovely. What's going on?
Well, I think like any club, there's we have an element, but yeah, we are a nice bunch. And I think for those Sutton fans who haven't been since the days at Spitty Park, which it got us back playing in the city, but it was a pretty utilitarian athletics ground, with a track around the outside, windy suburb of the city. Those who are coming to Rodney Parade on Tuesday night, it's like a 15-minute walk from the station. It's a minute walk from centre of town. There are some good pubs for pre-match. If you find yourself wanting somewhere to go, then Ye Old Moringa House is a Sam Smith's pub, which does very good beer and good food. And over the road from that is a place called Tiny Rebel that is a sort of local brewery, and their beers are very, very good as well. So those are my two top recommendations for any fans. But having the club playing back in the centre of town has massively helped boost the attendances. I mean, I started going around sort of 2004, 2005 when you would have been there, Andy, and we would be getting 600, 800, maybe 1,000 on a good day. These days it's 2,500 on a bad week, and 3,000 plus on a good week. And when we've had the cup exploits we've had in recent seasons, it's gone higher still. And Rodney Parade is it's a very old-fashioned ground, but it's a nice ground. There's a mix of terracing and seating. There's an old stand, there's a new stand, but it does create a good atmosphere. And we just hope that this will be the season when we can, because a bit like you, kind of we found ourselves back into the league, blinking into the limelight and going, God, it's are we ready for this almost? And we've had a lot of change over the years, becoming a fan-owned club again, whilst back in the league and nearly getting relegated. It's been it's taken us a while to kind of steady the ship and now start to look for promotion, and we've had a couple of playoff final defeats, but I think there's a feeling that things are now starting to align, and this has been the season where, all right, we've had to change coach halfway through, but the system seems to be working. It's a good set of players, and I think crucially this season we started scoring goals, not just by being creative in midfield, but we've now in Dom Telford got a striker who can find the net. And I can't remember the last game he didn't score it. He just keeps popping up and finding goals, and is just on this sensational run of form. And he is the one who's going to cause you difficulty on Tuesday night.
Right. Cheers. I'm sure Matt is well aware of that. But I'm just going to ask for predictions now. Ed, no pressure, but the only one who's got it right so far in the couple of weeks I've been doing this is Tom from Bristol Rovers, and he got it absolutely spot on last time. So give us your prediction for Tuesday night.
I think it'll be a Newport win, and I think not because Sutton won't give us a good game, because I think you will, and I think you will definitely be a top half team this season, and I'll be very pleased to beat you. But I just think because you've had such a busy run of games and there's going to be some tiredness in the squad, whereas we've had time for a breather and time to work on things. I think it's going to be 2-0, and I think it'll be, a relatively comfortable 2-0.
Okay, Andy?
Oh, I hate doing predictions.
I know.
I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw,
Okay.
only because I think our strength at the moment is actually in defending. Our two informed players are really our centre back and our goalkeeper, and it's very, very difficult to get past them. Okay, Bristol Rovers got two. One was a penalty, which we shouldn't have given away, and the other one was, to me, I actually thought it was an own goal. But I haven't seen the replay, so I might have missed that. We are actually quite a difficult team, unless you're Leyton Orient to score against. But that doesn't mean that you won't score. But I just got a funny feeling that we might just nick one at the other end, because I think the thing we've got is that we don't necessarily have the as you've got with Dom Telford, the player who scores every single game. All our goals come from pretty much any player. I think Isaac Alafi's got the most at the moment with 6. Yeah. I think. But there are other players that have got 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. It's coming from all over the shop. So there's a lot of opportunities there, particularly if we get some set pieces, because we seem to be particularly good at those. Corners coming in from Rob Milson on the left-hand side, or one of his free kicks, or the long throws. Anything that comes from there usually ends up in a kind of a dangerous Sutton attack. There are the occasions where we will run 60 yards down the pitch and score, but they're few and far between. So I think I'm going to go for a 1-1, and a really entertaining, hard-fought League 2 game. If it is that, I'll be very, very happy. But I'm sure the best team on the night will win.
Well, I've gone far more scientific. I've let Football Manager decide it for me and did it on holiday mode, unemployed, and 2-2 is the score it's come up with. Must say, all the way through the season, it's come up with only one of them correct, and only 2 results correct. So I'm not holding out an awful lot of hope, but it's better than my other system anyway. So, I've gone for 2-2.
Predicted score on football web pages as well.
I didn't know that this was a thing.
If you go to football web pages and go to their predicted final table, it gives you this kind of complete random table. Below that table, it will say, and here are the results that we've predicted will happen to create this table. So you could try that one. It's probably less scientific than Football Manager.
This all sounds like witchcraft.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. None of it's true, and we all know that. But no, thank you very much, gents. It's been lovely. I will wrap it up there. I hope it's a good game. I hope it's not too cold in Wales. I'm sure I'm going to have Jared on to talk about it. I'm sure he'll be delighted because it's one of his nearest matches this year. Got a fan comes from every home game almost, or pretty much every home game, I think, all the way from, is he Swansea?
Swansea, yeah.
Yeah, he's in Swansea, so he comes all the way down. So he circled this one really early in the season. So, and I believe he's actually...
It will be hard pushed to be colder than Bristol was yesterday.
Yeah.
Absolutely freezing.
It was. I was all right. I was sitting at home. I was fine. Yeah, t-shirt weather I was. But yeah, thanks a lot, gents. And if anyone gets a chance, please listen to Ed on the 1912 Exiles podcast. I got it right this time. Excellent. Yes. All right. Thanks a lot, gents. See you soon. Take care.
Thanks a lot. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
United! United! United!